Hello, welcome to the channel and thanks for watching. This video I'm going to show you what I've done to do my deathguard scratch built stroke kitbashed falchion, which is a forgeworld model. It's about 220 quid if you buy that. This in total cost about 60, maybe a little bit more, so fairly significant cost saving. Well, that's not quite why I was doing it. Now, I picked up last year an MH Mark IV tank, so World War I vehicle. This is the tadpole variant, so it's got a very long back to it, and obviously in the war that was used as like a mortar platform, very, very rare version of the tank. This is not a super detailed model. It cost me about 16 quid, I think, on discount offline, but obviously I was never going to build it as the actual Mark I tank. It was always going to be in some form kitbash from a deathguard. So the first step is building these track pieces. I don't know if you can tell from the instructions, but the tracks get built around the hull and the support structures are literally to be built around the hull, and it sort of slots in. So that was not going to happen because the original model was a little bit thin. So it's a very big model. It's Baneblade kind of sized, but a lot thinner because obviously it's based on reality. So I needed to bulk it up. So I started to build the sides, and when you see the contact points there, they're very, very small because again, meant to be formed around the hull. So I've put a number of pins, you'll see there. I've just cut them in out of sprue, made them the same width as the sort of track roller that's there, and then glued the sides together, the pieces, use some sprue to support the joins, and then when you put the sides together, when you see those pins I'm painting on there, you can see the sides of the sprue that I've done. It'll obviously make the box structure to make it a little bit stronger so that it will hold together. Now this is purely because I'm widening out the vehicle. The other thing I wanted to do is have it facing the other way. So this actual vehicle, the rear, is the sloping tracks, and that's where the mortar platform we put in, but I want it facing that way. I just think it looks kind of cool, but now it's about bulking it out. So I've done a series of measurements, literally just cutting out of thin plastic card. It's about 1 millimetre to 2 millimetre thin. I use different sizes across the model to make the spacer to expand the hull. Now I've expanded the hull by about 2.5 centimetres either side, so it's about a 5 centimetre expansion, but you can do whatever you like. It's test fit, do it by eye. The beauty of, I suppose, this build is that it is a deathguard one, so if you're not quite even, it doesn't quite matter. So I've put together the side sponsons, you can see there, that are going to go on there, which is where the cannon would be for the Mark IV tank, but I wanted the quad las cannons that obviously the falchion has. Now you see there the marine flyer, and I'm not going to use the las cannons from here, but I'm going to use these to cast up in a second. Now the side pods, obviously I want them facing the other way, because originally they're meant to face forward like you saw there to the short area, sticking them on reverse, and they do fit relatively well. A couple of little seams that you need to get over, but I'm just going to glue these in, and these are going to be the areas where the quad las cannons are going to go. On the actual falchion, you see that they're kind of supported by a strut and they kind of hang loose, but I wanted them in the body. So while that's drying, you can see the las cannons I've chopped out there. I'm taking a series of measurements of all the different hull, because there are actual angles in this hull. It does look like a flat top, but it's not. There are slight angles. So I'm just literally measuring up the distance that I need to slice. The bottom panel you'll see is one big panel that I've put in. I'm going to put a top panel that's straight across, so again a big surface area, and then some smaller sections that I'm going to cut up. So I just spent some time measuring while this was drying. Now it's about making the quad las cannons. You could obviously just go onto an eBay site, get loads of bits and stuff and order in yourself. What would you need? 8 las cannons. Could end up being quite expensive. Now I'm a big fan of this stuff. This is blue stuff from Green Stuff World, and it's kind of like a reusable moulding agent. I won't go fully into how to use it here, but you can see me knocking together the mould for these las cannons. I will link down below a video I've done on how to use blue stuff to cast things up. But I'm just going to make now a series of castings of those las cannons. And while that's kind of drying in the background, I'm now going to take my time to then cut up the plastic card to fill in all the gaps and make the hull of the vehicle. So this was done over the course of a few days. Now I've got in the habit of just mixing up the green stuff and milliput to make the las cannons, and then doing something else and just doing it over the course of a couple of days. You can cast these up relatively quickly. And you see here, now if you look at the colour difference, what I'm actually using for the las cannons is a milliput and green stuff mix. So it's a blend together. So mix up the milliput, mix up the green stuff, mix them together. And then any off casts I had, so this is pure milliput that I didn't need, I just then used some other moulds I got knocking around to make up some boxes for other projects. So this is quite a long thing. If you were to just do one cast of the las cannons a day, you'd be talking 3-4 days to get it done. But if you do a cast, do some modelling for an hour or so, what's then in that mould you'll be able to pop out, put somewhere flat to dry, and then you can fill the mould again, so you can do it in a couple of days. And you can see here I've then done all the different plastic card sections to bulk up the body and the hull of the tank. Now it's about fitting it into the tracks. So there's a couple of areas I'm just going to trim down and things, and you just got to keep playing, but broadly it fits if you just extend the entire body out by 2.5 centimetres, but I do a couple of bits to trim down like you always will in little projects like this. So there's a lot of pieces on this tank I didn't use, but you need kind of a command area, which I've built, and there's a couple of little boxes and extras that I've just built up to see where we're going to put them later, and you will have a look. So miasmic magnifier is the other kit I use. Now I did end up buying 2 of these. I was originally going to do just one and take the barrel that you're going to see us use and just cast that up and do a copy of it, but it wouldn't have looked quite right, I don't think, because you can never get it precise. So I ended up buying 2. Now I've taken a couple of the funnels that go off the miasmic magnifier to be the kind of fuel stacks, not fuel stacks, smoke stacks that are going to come off the back of this vehicle, and they look quite evocative of the Death Guard, and then just building up the big chimney, both sets of that. Now you can see here, obviously we've done this over the process of a couple of days, and these are all fully dry and set, and these are the obviously cast up las cannons. Just a very quick clean up. Now a couple of these castings didn't go quite right because I did rush, because I was trying to get it done fairly quickly. If you were doing that for a normal marine army, you clearly wouldn't want a slightly miscast one, but it's Death Guard, so actually a slight miscast and some weird moulding areas actually looks alright for Death Guard, so we got away with it. So I've stuck each of the las cannon sets together, because then off the Marine Flyer this is from, they do go together as a twin las cannon, and then just trimmed off some of the cables and things so they go together as a quad, and then just super glue these things together. Super glue works brilliantly on the green stuff and really put mix, really secure. So then they're together, and you have the quad las cannon that's going to go each side. Now I've stuck them so that the slope of the las cannons, if you call it that, are heading towards the centre, so it looks like I think it looks like the best angle to put them on. Bit of super glue in a few strategic areas, and then into those weapon pods. You will see a number of obviously large gaps looking inside the vehicle. Again, the beauty of Death Guard is that the vehicles get possessed and taken over and that type of thing. So just filling all these gaps with green stuff. So this is a pure green stuff mix. I'm not mixed it in with any milliput, that kind of thing. It's just green stuff. So just pushing that into the gaps, filling it, making it round, making it look fairly smooth and neat. But if it goes a bit kind of funny and lumpy looking, doesn't matter because it looks like it's been possessed. You can see there where I've cut out a tiny section to make this fit into the hull. So again, just test fitting now, and now it's time to put the hull together. I didn't want to put the hull together until I got these las cannons in, because you want to be able to access it from the back and the front, kind of as you're doing the green stuff in. So now it's really simple, just plastic glue to stick the entire hull together. So the plastic card I'm using, you can see there are a couple of different sizes, 1mm and 2mm. Really I was using what I had left from other projects, and there are a couple of things on this build that I would have done differently. And the thing I probably would have done differently for doing it again would be to extend the hull further forward into the gap between these two tracks. But I ran out of plastic card partly, and the other one is I'm quite enjoying the process I was going. Another change I would make in the future, you can see here I'm putting the tracks on, I would actually probably buy 2 of the Mark IV tanks, or widen the tracks out further and maybe fill the track gap in somehow, because the tracks are a little bit thin. Actually probably accurate for if this was a real vehicle, but it's 40k, so extra wide tracks would have probably been better. You can see me there sizing out where these 2 cannons are going to go. Again, digging out the plastic card again, and I'm going to make like a box structure on top of the tank, a bit like you see a World War II tank destroyer. Now unfortunately I've actually lost the footage of me putting that box structure together, but it's fairly easy. You know, if you can make a box out of cardboard, you can make a box out of plastic card. Just measure up the areas, make sure you make your cuts the right sort of size, and play. So I didn't have any preset sizes I was going to do on this. I just had a look and thought what's going to fit, what makes sense. And you can see on there, this is the box that I came up with. So these literally are rectangles, and then I cut a little triangle to make it fit, and then cut down the sides there. You can see it's not precise. There are some little gaps in there which we'll fill in and cover up later. So there was no kind of set size I did here. I literally looked at it and thought, how wide are these cannons going to be? I need a bit of extra space on there. Let's just fill in the space on top that makes sense. So I'm now cutting down the miasmic magnifier funnel, as you'd call it, because the ball kind of section at the end, I want to cut it right down and match it to the angle that I've put the glacis plate, I suppose you'd call it, on the box armour on the top. Roughly cut it down. We're not making this perfect. Now here, blue tack is your friend. Various parts of this build I stuck on the pieces with just lumps of blue tack. So you can see here I've put the 2 barrels on, I've put the fins on at the back, just to see what the tank looks like and what else I think I might need to do. Now, I picked up months and months ago some of the Horus Heresy deathguard rhino doors, and this to me makes an ideal top hatch. It also puts some of the deathguard iconography on, and I think it'll fit in quite well. So I did then at this point think, hey, it looks a bit bare, I want to put some more stuff on. So I dug out some Imperial Knight extras that I'd had from the Knight Army that I've done, that you may have seen on the channel, that I've converted to deathguard, and I started test fitting bits of Knight cannons and things to make it look a bit more mechanical and industrial, and in the end I didn't go for it. And there's nothing wrong with that. You know, as you're doing a build like this, if you experiment and play, you might put some pieces on, you might not, but in the end this is what I decided I would go for. Now, the rhino doors you see at the top, has got the hinges on, but I do remove them later, but I'm really happy with how that kind of looked. So time to take all those bits I blue tacked off and get them stuck on properly. And then again, blue tack is your friend. I've done this in various other builds you've seen. Great way of testing what the final effect's going to look like without gluing bits on and having to, you know, break them off if you don't like the look of them. So blue tack is a great little tool for you to have, and you can see there's some of the extra boxes and bits we've put on. So now it's about getting it assembled, but before we do that, as I said before, you can see a lot of areas where they aren't quite right. Plastic card cuts just as easy as a plastic model, so I'm going around now and just cutting down any of the seams where they're not quite right, where they're overhanging, to make it look a bit smoother, and then we're going to fill the gaps and cracks around the model with milliput to blend it in. The beauty of milliput is easy to mix. It's a 2-part putty, mix it together, and I'm using a sculpting tool, a bit of water on it to smooth it in. And you're looking to make not a perfectly smooth join, but it ends up looking a bit like weld lines if you do it right, and you're just filling the gaps and cracks around the model in. And now we're putting on those extras that we've tested with the blue tack, as you've seen. This is just some sort of ammo box that was on the back of the model, meant to be in the middle, but I've put it slightly off to one side so that when I stick that chimney on, it's going to work quite well. And now what I'm doing here is I'm actually using some milliput as well as the glue to almost seal it on at the back. So that's quite a big chimney piece. And the other pieces are just with plastic glue onto the plastic card, because you just need to use exactly the same glue, and there's no real difference. So really now just assembling those pieces you've already seen. You see me trimming down the rhino doors here, and this will just be super glued on sort of fairly central in the back. Now if you don't want to obviously order rhino doors from ForgeWorld, because I think the doors were slightly expensive, actually I didn't calculate that into my 60 quid calculation, so you're probably talking maybe 65, because I only use one of them for this actual build. But you could just use a door from any of the rhino model you're looking around, you could use a hatch from some scenery, it's entirely up to yourself. Now before I stuck the cannons on, the bits of the milling file that go with the cannons, just scoring the plastic card to give an extra bit of grip, because I'm actually not super gluing the cannons on. I'm using a big milliput plug and sticking that down, so it's just a bit of extra surface area, a bit of roughness for that milliput kind of to stick to. You could super glue them on and build up milliput around and things, but I've done this kind of thing before, and milliput gives a real good bond. If ever you do drop it, obviously there is a chance it might fracture at that join line, but then you can just super glue it back on, and where the lines are will help sort of mesh it back together. So before the milliput dries, I think this milliput's probably half an hour, 40 minutes old at this point, sculpting it down to make it fit. Now, things to notice is that you've got the sort of brass areas, the brass detailing on the magnifier. Now all I'm doing is just roughly matching up where they are. I'm not making the texture exactly right, because we're going to do something later to cover it up. I'm just making it look as close as you kind of can, and a bit, you know, demonic as it blends into the hull of the vehicle. Now what this thing is here, this is a rivet maker. I've used this before for some other pieces, but I'm making some big and some small rivets. They are very, very nice actually, very fitting in exactly to what the Death Guard do, like a 2-part rivet, octagonal, really nice. And these just need super gluing down. So I put some super glue on the plastic there. I'm just dipping the rivet end into the super glue and dropping it onto the model. You can see that's a large rivet, you'll see some small ones in a minute. So the rivet makers from Greenstuffville, I don't know if I saw that, and I'll again drop some links down below for all the bits of equipment and all the paints and stuff I used during this. I've used this rivet maker quite a few times, very, very nice. And what this is doing is it'll help you to break up the flat panels of plastic card that you've ended up leaving on the vehicle. And rivets are all over the Mark IV tank, so it does work quite well. Now back to the blue stuff casting. So these are cast up pieces of the Glockkin model. If you watch the channel a lot, you'll know I've done some knights that are really nurglified up. I converted one of them at the Glockkin, and I took a series of castings off the Glockkin model to use in future builds. So these are like pustules and sort of gross nurgly pieces. You can glue them straight on, like I did in that first piece there, or cut the bits down just to make them so look nice and super glue them on. Now, if you don't want to do this, you can do something different. I'm going to show you in a minute. You don't have to go buy a Glockkin model to take some castings off, but if you do have one, it's brilliant to cast these things up for future projects. And you can see there, you know, that it was months and months ago I made these castings off the Glockkin, still keeping those little moulds. Eventually I might get bored of them and melt them back down, but still using them now. Now this is another thing you can do if you don't want to cast up the green stuff, or you can do both like I've done here. I've put patches of milliput on the model, you'll see, to represent like pustules and horrible bits. Now what I'm putting in here is little balls of milliput or green stuff that I've had excess at other times, and I've just rolled a little ball and let it set, rather than wasting that milliput or that green stuff. So this is going to represent like gross demonic flesh coming out of the tank, and these are the pustules that are going to be in that flesh. They're just literally little balls of milliput and green stuff. And then using a sculpting tool to just stab a few little holes and things, just to put a bit of texture into where that flesh is coming out. So if you didn't have a cast up system of, you know, the other pustules, you could do this in multiple places across the model, and that would be absolutely fine and still look really cool. And I've said it time and time again, but doing this kind of stuff on a nurgle vehicle is brilliant, because even if you mess up, it still looks fine because it's nurgle. Now we're going to blend in those little areas of green stuff castings that I've done, and this is liquid green stuff, which is something Games Workshop sell, which comes in a pot, and I'm using that to really kind of make the step up from the flat area to the slightly raised area of the green stuff to blend it in. I'm also going to whack some of it on the tracks to represent muck and dirt and manky bits, and where the tracks join, these are rubber kind of tracks, there are some sort of gaps and things, so just filling in those gaps to try and cover it up. Like that. And you could do this part with sand and PVA, or you could do it with, you get some of that resin paste, and that would be fine as well. So in terms of spraying, I've sprayed this up, and I used the green as a base coat because I had the can. I'm trying to get through all my old cans of spray because I'm trying to use my airbrush a little bit. So this year's kind of project. And then I've sprayed it with silver. And I've said before, silver's a great base coat for futuristic models, because if you miss bits, the metal shows through, and also it's time saving for tracks and that kind of thing. What I'm doing now is Agrellan earth, painting that onto the areas around where the pustules are coming, but also you can see later on some flat panels of the armour, and this, what it does is it cracks. It looks like broken old rusty armour, as you can see here. Now the painting, I'm not going to go into massive depth, it's the same painting as I've done on most of my deathguard, but I will again put the colours down below mixed in with some other model bits and hobby stuff I like you might want to take a look at. So stippling is your friend when you're doing this. This is more of a stippling stabbing motion. It puts some texture into the paint as well, really helps. We've done the whole model with deathguard green. Now we're doing the detailing. So nice brass colour. Brass works really well for deathguard. I'm sure if you've done it yourself, you will like the kind of colour. Makes it aged. Putting a nice pallid sort of flesh colour around all the pustules, all the manky bits that we've added on, and also onto some of the cracked armour where we've put that crackle paint nowhere near where these pustules are, just for some effect. Now I go for a yellow base coat when I'm doing sort of pustules for deathguard. We're going to cover this later on with nurgles rot, and yellow's a really nice base colour for that. It also adds a little bit of visual difference to a big flat area of green that you will have. Skulls. These are the ones that I've cast up again from the Glockkin. So just happen to drop some details here. We're doing a lot of detail, but we're not going super detailed on the model because the actual impact is from the whole effect. So you could do more, you could do less, you could keep it fairly plain. I'm painting over the areas where we've put mud and dirt onto the tracks. These tracks look very clean at the moment, they won't later. I'm also brushing up onto some of the green, not going crazy with the weathering because the ink wash we're going to do in a minute will really help it out. And then talking about the ink wash, my favourite Games wash, I've done it with all my nurgle, I do it with a lot of models. This is a Vallejo sepia wash, brilliant one to use, massive pot and relatively cheap. Slather the entire model in it and it really changes the depth and tone of the model. You can see here it's dried, there is a lot of streaking on this, but that's fine, don't worry about that. We're going to cover a lot of that over now. We're going to use exactly the same colours we used for the first stage, and we're just going to stipple and dry brush over as much as we want. You know, we don't want to get rid of all the streaks because actually streaks are quite deathguardy, but you want to just take it down a level and it'll put multiple colours and tones in there. Going back over the flesh, you can see where the cracked armour and things are. So this is really for the flesh, the pustules. This is just a section of cracked armour we've done. So going over that with the very soft dry brush of the white just brings multicolours up. And then going back over the pustules and stuff. Now you can see here, looking at the armour panel, all the different tones that are in that green on that side panel, but actually it's only been done with minimal colours. So great for deathguard because it makes it start looking manky and bruised and horrible and rotten old armour, and that's exactly the effect we're going for, just across the model. So very, very minimal colours. Now I'm doing the metal last. You've seen here the brass. This is really just to pick any areas on the brass where we've gone over with that dry brushing stage and might have messed it up. Now here I'm using magos purple, which is a contrast paint. We're just putting little bits of it around all the bruised areas, all the broken armour areas, and it just gives a nice sort of purpley tone and makes it look a bit sort of demonic. Now onto the nurgles rot. So we're looking like this stuff is pouring out, these pustules all over the tank, and hopefully you can see where I've again done that magos purple in the stage before. You can see all the different colours coming out there, and it does really look manky and deathguard even on the cracked armour areas. Burnt kind of effect across the funnels and stuff. We're doing 3 of the Games Workshop shades, so druchii violet, drakenhof nightshade, and then nuln oil, and it looks beautiful. And here's the finished model. So I hope you like this. It is a big, chunky, quite impressive model. Looks dirty and deathguardy. Again, if I did it again, I'd probably widen up the tracks a little bit, and I might do some of the hull, but I'm really happy with how this model turned out. I hope you like it. If you do, like, comment, subscribe, check out my Instagram and Facebook, and check all the stuff down below. Cheers!